Founders, welcome back to the 0 to 5,000 podcast, where we obsess over the convergence of human potential and business results. Today, our hosts Drew McClure and Jordan Mitchell have another insightful conversation for you. So let's jump right in.
Okay, founders, welcome back to the podcast. Today, we're joined by Vinnie Fisher. Vinnie is a passionate husband and father of 4. He recently exited his 4th business, Fully Accountable, after 10 years. He is now on a mission to empower and equip mentors to invest in the next generation of leaders and build legacy through multiplication. And here to tell us about his journey is Vinnie. So Vinnie, thank you for being here.
Hey, Drew, thanks for having me, buddy. I'm excited.
So tell me, you have done something unique and rare, never done, but rare in terms of percentages, which is started a company that was successful and exited successfully, and you've done it 4 times.
Yep.
Take us back to the beginning. 1, did you always know you wanted to run your own business, or was that kind of a surprise in life?
You know, it's really good. I think entrepreneurs, we always have these like classic entrepreneur stories. And I've always, it's funny when I think back to, I stole my brother's paper route when he broke his arm from football, and I did it better than him. And I'm sure we still have issues today because of that. And then I was always like thinking about ways to do something. I was driven. A lot of that started not always so great, Drew. I was a kid in poverty, mostly in poverty mindset. And so I just wanted to do something to break out of a cycle, and I didn't want to be poor. And so I was always just looking to do something. I was a hustler. I've got this like driven personality. And so when I started practicing law and I was in this big fancy firm, I already had a couple businesses in college. We had a delivery service. Deb and I had a tax service. So I've just been this guy that always had these like hustles. And then when I was practicing law, I really got really good at business and acquisition and all the things about a corporate practice. And it was there I realized that I was able to take that talent and then combine that with my tolerance for risk and take it to the marketplace. So my last 5 or 6 ventures have all been kind of scale them into 8 figures, and broke one tragically, which I wrote a book about, but and that was my biggest one, ironically. But yeah, and so I'm really am a very entrepreneurial person.
Yeah. Okay, so what was the first business you started out of the law firm?
So I was in my law firm, and we had a healthcare client that did mental retardation, and we had a privilege to write this thing. It's called an amicus brief. That's a fancy legal thing, which means as a lawyer, we were experts on how to provide a certain service. So we wrote an opinion to the assembly for Ohio about what we should do about the law. And they adopted a lot of our language, specifically mine. And when we were all done with that, our client, we got the law changed to provide what's called day service programming, like workshops for mentally retarded adults. But in that provision was this provision about you shouldn't really own one of those if you're the mental retardation home provider. And our client was the largest in Ohio at the time. And I remember them saying to us, like, well, that's great. Now you just blocked me from providing that business. And I jokingly said, well, I could provide that. And his words were something like, well, you're just like a lawyer. And I'm like, well, why don't you give me a 5-year contract and I'll show you what we can build. 11 locations later, we built this wonderful company called Creative Learning Workshop that's still alive today. We had a little bit of a rough ending, he and I. They bought it back from us. It ended well. It was a relatively fair transaction, but it was a little bit of a contract of coercion as well, because they were our largest client. So that was a lesson I learned in business. Got paid somewhat fairly, but also kind of got exited in a forceful transaction. It was a win and a loss at the same time.
What were the biggest lessons from that first business?
Diversify your client base. Don't be so incumbent to one vendor that they have that much control over you. I learned really the power of people in that business that I didn't run. That was the first business I never really operated. I was truly its owner and almost like chairman. I brought a president in, and George and we went out and I built these locations fast. I designed them. If I had to, I painted them. I did whatever I could to get these things up and rolling. And we did all of that in such a short period of time that we came out of nowhere, that I realized the power of people. And I really started developing my ability to expansively lead others. And that was where I got my biggest lessons in that.
That's really cool. What did you do differently in the second business and from that point on?
Yeah, I mean, I might take a while to learn things, but I like that I keep certain things and I add to them. And, I was growing as a person too. Like my first taste of success probably came in the law firm world because I was able to like actually have a bank account and save money. And Deb and I were cycle breakers of like the brokenness in my life. And I think like with CLW, we called it, I tasted another version of success, got paid some money for exiting. And I started to realize I was building business so that I proved that I had what it takes to be a man and that I was valuable, like I was worthy of being loved. So I wasn't really building businesses that were valuable. I was building them that they made money. And my mindset started to change in our next business. We built a web hosting company and I was doing it again, but my heart was like not in it. And I realized that like I was just building something that like had a lot of employees and solved a problem, but if we went away, we wouldn't have really changed the world. And my heart really started to change in the things we built going forward from there.
What was the catalyst for that?
Value proposition. Like I was just having people like comment to me because, my personality is like one that like I'm always like struggling with am I worthy of being loved? And I want to be loved. I care probably a lot what people think. And so people would say comments about like, you're really good at building like a business. It doesn't mean much, but you're good at building them. And those kind of hit. And I started building things more valuably and with a little more quality to the deliverable. And I noticed that they were better businesses and they made more money and they stuck around longer. And I don't know, I just realized that value proposition became a thing. And I noticed some of my own self-worth improving. I noticed the value of the organization and the people that worked for us, that the objective mission overcame my ability to like cheer them.
Interesting. So one, that's hilarious and kind of rude that people would reflect that your business, you're good at making business, but that it didn't have a value proposition. That's like a kind of frank thing to say to somebody.
I really, my faith is, Drew, I'm so thankful how it's grown over the years. And I really think those people were used to speak into my life. And, honestly, if you're going to live as a leader and you do things and you're a little bit advanced, so to speak, in the things you do in your community and you hold yourself out, you're going to get those things. And I would encourage anyone listening to this that try to develop an ear for hearing the criticism and quiet down the defensiveness, because even though there's usually selfish motivations and the agenda's wrong, there's usually some loving advice in there.
Yeah, that's well said. So what do you find your value in now?
I still am a problem solution person. I see a problem, I want to solve it. I just exited one of my fourth business, and I love that company. We just celebrated our 10th anniversary, but I exited differently this time because I'm running to something, not fronting from something. And like I'm being really driven into this void of multiplication in leadership, and even more importantly, mentors who are equipping leaders in this and in multiplication, and how that really builds the kind of depth in organizations that allow them to survive beyond people like me, the founders.
Yeah. How do you know when it's time to exit?
Usually, if I'm being honest, you stay too long. If you're someone like me who builds things, I'm amazing at the build it, create it phase. But a company gets, if it's done well, it gets consistent and efficient.
Yeah.
And it needs, I'm like a 0 to 1 type personality. I can start stuff. Those 1 to 10s or 2 to 8s or 3 to 7s, like all those people usually would never be able to start something, but they're going to be way better at maintaining them and improving them. And so I'm probably a year late on the exit of this one. I never envisioned owning an accounting firm for the rest of my career. I love it. And I love the people that I've built and the leadership team and the multiplication and the story. But I'm probably, honestly, even they noticed I should have been gone about a year ago.
Just lack of motivation or interest, or what's the indicator?
I used to break stuff like that, Drew. I used to get bored, and then I would break something or I would move away from it and I would be a bad steward. This is different. I I really started to see a vision for like this next 10-year run around mentorship and building out Mentor Academy and helping like really drive home leadership multiplication and how that really defines success in companies. And so my heart started wandering there. And because of that, I was drifting away from the business. And so at that point, I got to look at the asset, look at the equity, look at the opportunity for the business. And the better move is to either sell it to a third party, and in this case, to the partners that were running the business.
Cool. Now you mentioned, I want to come back to what you're building now, but you mentioned earlier that you broke one of the businesses, and then you just mentioned you did it different this time. What does that mean? How did you break a business?
I'm really good at starting things. I'm also really charismatic and passionate. I can get excited about just about anything. You're excited, I rally around you about it. Well, that kind of leadership can work, and especially when you're pulling a lot of levers. But if you're pulling a lot of levers and you stop doing that, the thing can break really fast. And in my blindness and in my arrogance, I didn't realize how many levers I was really pulling in that business. So I stepped away from it, thinking I built some depth and leadership, and I was completely wrong. And I handed the reins off to a CEO that was not prepared or ready at the time. And made some really not so good decisions for the organization. Now, he and I are good today. And if he's listening, he's probably like, oh, Vinnie, why are you saying that again? Like, we're good. But at the time, we weren't good. And it was really not great for the company. And I had to take it back. And when I did, when I handed it off, we were doing north of $4 million a month in revenue. When I took it back, we were nosediving at about $1 million and change in revenue. And it was just collapsing. And the thing, I had already had it teed up for sale, and it was literally 100% my fault. And so I just promised myself never to build a business again that's trapped around me. And that's the whole essence of Beyond Your Shadow for me. I've been living that for the last 12 years of my life, that I'm not going to do that again. And thankfully, we're not.
Yeah. Okay. So talk to me about it. Is that what the name of the new initiative or business project is, Beyond Your Shadow?
Yeah, I wrote a book called The CEO's Mindset. And by the way, for any listeners, if anything we have, I'll have our team create beyondyourshadow.com/gifts, and they can have all of it. Like anything I reference, it's yours.
Cool.
Just go there and get it. I guess the only thing I'll get from you is your email. So there you go. But in return for that, please go get the resources we have. And one of those is this book I was referencing. I really went through this journey of building things, and in the CEO's Mindset, the first name of that book was going to be called Beyond Your Shadow. So I've been living in this idea, like my shadow is large and I have a large personality and it casts over top of your organization. The reality isn't whether you have one. The reality is, what do you do about dealing with it? And are you somebody that's capable of building an organization that is not centered around you? Because most businesses that you and I talked about even before the show started going was, and we'll repeat some of that here for our guests, most businesses don't sell, or they don't sell well because the leader's trapped in them. And that's what changed for me, Drew. Long answer to an easy question is I didn't want that. And so that's what Beyond Your Shadow started at. Literally, like I said, almost in my mind 8 years ago, make sure we don't do that again. And I'm really thankful I didn't name CEO's Mindset that, because I think what we're doing this round with multiplication and mentorship is a better version of what that book is going to look like. And I'm going to have that out in the fall. And if you listen to this, you're going to be able to get a first advanced copy of that on that gift page. Take advantage of that.
Cool. So when you were applying this yourself and realizing you wanted to start implementing a different way of building a business by developing the leadership team around you, what were some of the first steps you took that you were encouraged to see the results?
Yeah, I tell you, one of the mistakes we make as leaders is we don't intentionally invite people into this journey. And so I started thinking more in an apprentice model. Yet I believe in a hiring matrix of kind of the attitude, effort, and ability, right? And so I believe farm system more than free agency. I've done well growing people up. One of the tricky parts of growing someone up is this kind of framework I follow. You got to first invite someone into the journey. You got to say, hey, I see some things in you where you have qualities that we could really develop out leadership. Do you want that? If they say no, move on to somebody else. But if they say yes, invite them in and start, after you invite them in, like start equipping them, spend time with them, like have them see what you're doing, and then take this on this journey. And I have this like little kind of apprentice multiplication matrix that'll be one of the infographics in that gift page. You can have it, but I would then put someone in a role. One of the mistakes business owners make, and I was guilty of it too, is you quickly promote someone and give them a title and they're not ready for it. I believe in like under titling people, bring them in like in the role, have them start doing it. Heck, the now CEO leader of Fully Accountable, who owns a chunk of the business, was basically a legal intern running it without a title. The title came much later when she like earned it, not like was given it. And so there's this, like, after you invite, you equip them and then you get them in the game, and eventually you step away and they're running it. And if you do that model, I know it sounds simple, but you'd be shocked how many people don't do this. But if you do that, then the final piece of that is like celebrate, like pushing them out, and now you're watching them. And honestly, when it's done well, you feel like I feel today, like a little bit lonely because they're doing it without you. And they're like off doing it. And you're like, man, I kind of miss those days where I was mentoring them, and now I get to mentor somebody else. Yeah.
What's the toughest part of that process?
It's just that, like, I'm like a pastor too, right? So I really care about people and I care about your life. So when you get to that later stage of mentoring, they're very capable of running the business. So they're usually dealing with personal growth things. So you get to know a lot of personal things about somebody. And when the student, if a mentor does their job well, I should do everything I can to give Drew, you everything. So not only you succeed, but you soar past any of my abilities. And now Rachel's soaring past even my own abilities. And so I'm a little sad because those day-to-day things. But that means that I'm supposed to now have room to do that for some more people.
Yeah. What can you talk through that framework a little bit, that apprenticeship framework?
Yeah. So you really need to start identifying. Like I get accused of being an eagle spotter, right? I would say eagle-let spotter. I spot baby eagles, but I see something in them. I have an attitude of always looking for high quality people. You start to know them, right? I'm looking for value stuff and this like it factor and things you have about yourself. It's potential. Yeah. And so the first thing you gotta do is you gotta have eyes, ears for potential. Look for it. Right? When I hear people say, I don't have a good leadership team, I'm like, well, what kind of ears and eyes do you have for even looking for it? And they're usually like, oh, I'm not looking. So that's the first bit. Second bit is once you have identified them, you got to invite them in like I talked about earlier. And after you invite them in, you got to spend time equipping them. You can't just invite them in and assume they can do what you can do. You got to spend time and you got to give them some at-bats, and they got to skin their knee and they got to break stuff. It's like when I was a lifeguard. I remember my first thing I would do as a young lifeguard is I'd get all the kids in the water and I'd say, blow bubbles. The ones that blew bubbles, I had them get out of the water and dive into the deep end. Moms didn't love it, but I knew they weren't scared of the water. And my non-bubble blowers needed to stay there to learn how to blow bubbles. So you kind of equip them based on where they're at. And then you hand off. You got to let them lead without you. And then it's expanding. In my way of doing it, I would bring someone along that I want them to sign up for two things. One is I'm going to do it again with someone else. So I've handed off Rachel as my example I was talking about, but then I expect her to do it with somebody else too. And if you look at the roster of Fully Accountable, like we have leadership multiplication throughout the whole thing. And there's this like duplication of it. It becomes infectious. Like you see the multiplication and you want to do it yourself. And so that's the framework, Drew. And that's why I'm so passionate about it, because I know it works. And I really, really, really want people to hear this message. So I'm so excited to be on your show and scream in my microphone about how awesome this stuff is.
What do you think someone listening, if they did have a fear, maybe that's what it is, or an objection or a resistance to doing this, in your experience, what do you think that might be?
It's always around people hurting them. It's always around like taking risk on people and they let you down. I think William Shakespeare had it right. It's better to be loved than to have been hurt than never to have loved at all. I think there's a risk you got to take with people. They're going to let you down. They're going to take the talents and resources you've given them. They might go somewhere else. You're going to make decisions and invest in somebody. You're going to hurt them and they're going to hurt you. And I think that's the main reason people don't do these things. They don't know it at the time, but that's usually what it is.
I think that's very insightful. I can 100% resonate with that. And so the encouragement or the perspective you might offer is what, if they're feeling that and thinking that?
The journey is amazing. You're going to find out so many people you can impact in life. Your business and the things you want to do are going to be so much more stable. They're going to be consistent and efficient. And those are really the hallmarks of a good company.
Yeah.
And because of that, whether it's a service or product company, these people that you develop around you will really expand. And because of that, and you take a growth mindset into people, your multiplication will be generational. You will impact lives, even if they hurt you or let you down or leave you. It's immeasurable. I know that there are a bunch of people. There are some that are probably disappointed, but there are a bunch of people who are real thankful for my dedication to leadership in their life.
Absolutely. You know, in my previous career, in my 20s, I was in ministry. I was a college and young adults pastor. And most of my job was mentorship. It's what I was doing all the time. And I had about 4 to 6 guys that I had been investing in for a year that had recently gotten out of addiction and AA and juvenile detention centers and whatever. And they were unbelievable. And I gave them everything. And kind of a bad apple, another adult got in their ear and started twisting them and started putting some like real kind of fundamentalist, I don't know. He took advantage of them in a weird way. And long story short, things turned in a way that like really wounded me and felt like a real betrayal. And I was kind of like the person you were talking about. I went probably 5 years without really investing in people like that again, until somebody that was quasi investing in said, one day said, "Man, I'm really sorry for what you went through about 5 years ago." I said, "Oh, thanks, man. I'm okay." And he's like, "No, I'm more sorry for myself." I was like, "Why?" He's like, "I don't think anybody's gotten access to you since in the way that they got access to you." And he's like, "Do you think you could heal?" And I was like, "Holy cow."
That's so loving. That's amazing.
It was unbelievable.
I am sorry what you went through too. And praise the Lord that he used this guy to kind of, so to speak, wake you up.
Absolutely. But it was that fear that you're talking about that I had to look at and say, hey, there's no guarantee when you get back in the people game, the loving people, investing in people game, there's no guarantee that's not going to happen again. But the question is, which is better, right? Do I want to play it safe and protect myself and isolate myself and miss out on the gift of that community and that seeing that shared experience? And I started realizing, like you just said, the Shakespeare quote, like, let's go that way. Even if I get wounded again, let's go that way. And so I really resonate with what you're building right now.
Thanks, Drew. I really appreciate that. Part of the burden is as I age through in my success, I see people in transitions, regardless of age, and they're starting to question things like purpose and what they're going to do. And one of the things we sell in this society is a competing mentality, not a completing mentality. And as a result of that, like when you're done, the reward is retirement or leisure. And I'm really trying to fight that because I feel like the reward should be the privilege to invest in the next generation.
Heck yeah. Yeah, I articulated this once, actually in my book, that I think our culture is missing elders. And I said there's a difference in being elderly and being an elder.
Amen, buddy.
Elderly is just age. You've just been on the planet for a long time.
Actually, I would even say, just to push back a hair, I would say old is age. Elderly is actually what I've learned is mindset. I know some old dudes. By the way, I've been personally mentored by John Maxwell. The guy's going to be 78. I'm going to see him here like in a week or so. And John's amazing. He's not elderly because his mindset is always growing. I think when people have been out of the game a minute, they all of a sudden become elderly. And I know young people who think elderly. They don't even have a physically old body.
God, that's really good. The elder, think about it, like elder was a title of honor for so long where the gray meant wisdom. And that it was like you were not hunting and gathering anymore. You were sitting around and leading the next generation of young warriors and moms and adults, right? And I think we're all missing that right now. So I love the way what you're stepping into.
Yeah, and the tricky part is like I have to say some things out loud that are going to hurt people that are real or bring up wounds, right? And the biggest wound is that we have probably in all of history, the worst version of a fatherless society going on right now. And the attributes of mentoring model what healthy fathership looks like. And so, I'm just going to handle the piece he's given me and see if he wants to trust us with more and if we can make a big difference. We're going to build a model of it for the local church, and we're going to build a model of it for in the marketplace. And so, thanks for letting me have the voice to get that
really
out.
Cool.
But I'm real excited about see if we can get some people engaged and give them a reason to get out of bed.
Yeah. So who is in the marketplace? Who is this for? Like, who's it being built for right now?
I'd say it's for that 45 plus year old who is like sitting there like, wow, I've run my run and I don't want to run another one, but everyone tells me I have to go back and do it again. What can I do without checking out? What can I do to have something where I'm investing in others and maybe even turn it into a business model where we're going to build Mentor Academy for them. For the local church, we're building a thing called Momentum Mentor. It's a nonprofit organization that I'm a big part of. And we built the first version of it called Marketplace. And this is where we saw the mentor problem. And we're creating a version of that for the local church, all local churches. And it's launching here this fall. So there's a marketplace version and a church version being launched.
Super cool. Super cool. Okay. So on the marketplace side, that 45-year-old avatar, is that a current CEO of a company? Is that just a leader? Like who is that built for?
Yeah, so it's a leader, right? So leadership is influence, right? John Maxwell's words, not mine. But I agree with it. And, you don't have to be an owner of a business. By the way, that makes up 1% of the world, right? So this is bigger than that. There are leaders in so many categories. But there's also this design in our marketplace that our goal is retirement. And if most people run, our number isn't 65. That first significant transition happens a little after 45, or as you get close into 50, people are being either cycled out of the corporate world or out of a job or out of a thing, and they start this pattern of transition. Well, in that, we have been focusing on one of the most basic needs of society, money. Don't get me wrong, I like having it, and I'm glad I can pay my bills. But once we have that box checked at some level, we start defining our worth off of it. And so we've run the race, we've become an expert in something. And now our job is to go hit a golf ball or sit in a hot tub or push. And I think we bought into this. And then when we're in it, we go, wait a minute, I can do so much more. Why am I only doing this? So the reason I'm starting at 45 is because this is when it starts for some people, including me. Because really halfway, we like to say 45 because 90 feels better than 80 or 82 as a halfway. And in reality, we want that. We want to be 100. So we think of 50 as really our halfway. And honestly, we have so many years left, even if we're wrong about that.
Yeah.
So what I want to help someone do is realize we can take that wisdom, that talent you have, and look to someone else to help. Because even the 38-year-old who's just doing it for the first time, like you hear things like you're guessing as you're going, like or fake it till you make it, which I hate. But there's a little truth to that. Like someone should ask me, what's it like to have a 24-year-old daughter? I don't know. I'll let you know next year. Well, sometimes running a business is like that. Like you don't know until you've reached a certain milestone. Well, there's so many mentors who have been in some form of leadership that are absolutely equipped and capable of helping. And it's two-sided. The leader who wants to be the multiplier and the mentor both need to be in a posture of willingness. And what I've noticed is there are a lot of mentors who need to be invited in, no different than the way we do leaders, equipped, resourced, and deployed. And that's what we're building.
So you'll be doing both. You'll be recruiting people to be mentors and then finding people that are looking for that mentorship.
That's right.
Cool. Is that product just setting up a coaching relationship with them, or is there a platform? Or
we're going to put all of our energies into the mentor, because I'm already a mentor. I'm a business mentor. People can hire me now and have been, and I have my own group of business leaders who look to me as their primary mentor.
Yeah.
And it's wonderful. I'm going to model that as an ambassador for Beyond Your Shadow for other mentors of something they can do. I'll continue to do that. But really, there are already leaders of businesses. What they're missing is access to mentors who have been identified and want to do it and have the equivalent skill set to match up with them. So I really want to build a mentor army, and then the leaders will, through time, come and have access to it.
Cool. What are you most excited about for this first year of it launching?
You know, at the local church too, the unity around generations. Anything that's done well, organizations that are for-profit or not-for-profit, Christ-centered or not, unity among intergenerations is the key.
Yeah.
You look at some of Jesus's teachings, he's always pushing into intergenerational stuff, and it stands the test of time for a reason. And so to me, I am the most excited about creating language, because I always start things, right? So most of this language is light, or it doesn't exist much. And so my job is to create the dirt road so people can pave behind. I know it's the hard part, but it's the part I'm always excited about.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And then again, you've been so generous offering the listeners to be able to go to your website and take advantage of some of those free gifts and resources. What are a few of those things they could expect to go check out over there?
Yeah, they'll get, you can go and get our books off Amazon if you want. I've got 3 I've written, and I have a 4th one coming out here this fall. Well, you'll get access to all those. We have these resources and guides on how to be effective at being a multiplier as a leader. You can have those. And it's packed with you'll be shocked how many resources are sitting there, and they're just yours. And then I guess the only thing I'm bribing in return is your email, and then you'll be on our emailing list, and
cool.
You'll get to hear from insights from me. But mostly we try to give this stuff away, because whether you work with us or not is not the point. I want people resonating with being a multiplier.
Love that. And say the website one more time where they can go.
beyondyourshadow.com/gifts.
And is that the same website they can go to if they're looking to sign up for what you release in the fall?
Yep.
Perfect. Awesome. Go check it out. Thank you, Vinnie, for being here. I'm super excited for the movement that you are starting and carrying forward. I believe in it wholeheartedly, and I hope our audience connects with you on it. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks, Drew.
Founders, thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast and hop into our monthly founder email so we can ensure you stay on the edge of peak performance and massive business results.